Alright, so in the last video, we tamed the land. Basically, we took something that's wild, not straight, square, plumb, or level, and we made it straight, square, plumb, and level. So at this point, we're going to start laying our ICF blocks. The step footing steps down 16 inches, which is the height of the blocks, and then it steps down another 16 inches here. So that makes it nice and easy to not have to cut too much. If you were using conventional forms, it would be a little bit harder. So the way I like to do these is lay out one row going along the whole thing and mark out where I want my rebar, and then I'll either just leave it there and drill through, or I'll take it back off and drill. Either way, it's not that big of a deal. But we need a vertical piece of rebar sticking up 2 feet from the footing, every 4 foot on center. And actually in my engineered plans it says every 6 foot on center in the step footings, but I'll just do 4 foot on center anyways. So these footings are 10 inches deep, 20 inches wide. It's a little bit wider and taller than normal. Normally they'd be 8 by 16, but in this case that's what the engineered plans called for, so that's what we did. We got 3 pieces of number 4 rebar. So the way I like to do it, I like to do at least 2 rows to lock them together. And then I like to adhere them down to the footing, get them all nice and good, and then I'll take the second row off, and then we'll put our horizontal rebar in all of it. If you don't do that, then if your pieces of rebar aren't exactly at a 90, then you'll never be able to hold the ICF there, and you'll end up having to use Tapcons to like hold them in place. But if you lay 2 rows together, lock them together, foam in the bottom so that it's adhered to here, shim them up so that they're level, then you take off the second row and put in your horizontal pieces of rebar, then they'll stay in place even if your rebar is a little bit out. It'll actually conform the rebar. The adhesion to these footings is actually stronger than the rebar is, and it will make it so the forms don't move at all, so you can have them exactly where you want them. So we're going to get some chalk lines on here, and we're going to get laying out some ICFs. Alright, so I like to use this window and door foam because it doesn't expand. Well, it expands, but it doesn't expand like the orange can or the red can. And it doesn't push up on these because these are just foam and they don't weigh a lot. So if you put the red can in there, it will push up. What I like to do is spot foam it about every 16 inches, every foot to every foot and a half or so. That'll adhere it down to the footing, and then you can go back and fill in all the spots in between the spot foams, and you can use the red can at that point because it's adhered at that point. So what we did is we shimmed up from there all the way around to there. So you can see we got shims all along over to about there. We kind of ran out of shims, so we're going to reuse them after I spot foam this in and it dries. Once it dries, you can pull out all the shims. We got shims on the other side too, so there's a lot more than what you see here. And this is just to get it reasonably level. Right now we made it perfectly level, but as you stack these, it's going to become off level just a little bit, but at least you got a fighting chance on getting it somewhat level at the top by starting out good. Because these footings, you know, I mean they're rough, so little rough spots here and there where the boards go across. We could like shave those down with a grinder, but I find it's just better just kind of float it up a little bit. And we had a little bit of a high spot here, so we cut off the teeth so that it could go down a little bit, and then the other spots we kind of shimmed it up. Otherwise, if you're starting out like 1/2 inch, 3/4 off the level, then chances are by the time you get to the top, it's going to be pretty bad. So this is not something that everybody does, but I like to do it just because I like to spend a little bit more time at the beginning and do this and then get it right, and then you can worry a little bit less as you go on, and you can kind of fly through as you go on instead of constantly rechecking everything and figuring out why it's not level. Also, if you start out with it level with 2 courses, they're locked together, so now the joints between them are perfect. So there's many different reasons why I do this, and it does take a lot longer, but I do believe that you get a better product when you're done. So also this will adhere your blocks left and right to your line so that you don't have to worry about if you knock it and it goes off the line a little bit, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Again, just something to keep you after this point flying along. So once this is adhered down to here, we're going to pull off this top course, finish drilling our rebar with epoxy, put our first course of horizontal rebar in, and then put these back on the top. And I know to some that may seem like a waste of time, but trust me, if you like doing things right, this is the way to go. All right, so I just thought about it, and I want to clarify why I spot foam it instead of just foaming in the whole thing. First of all, you can use the red stuff in between, which is a little bit cheaper, but that's not really the main reason why you want to do it. The main reason is because you got the shims here, and you want to let these set up before you take the shims out, and when you take the shims out, you're going to have another hole. So you might as well just spot foam it, let it dry, come around, remove the shims, and now you can get everything else. So you can just pull the shims out, reuse them. Now you can fill in the other spots. In my case, I had some to use up, so that's why you see it like solid right there instead of being spot foam. But that's just because I had that can to use up. You don't want to get too close to those shims because you'll kind of adhere them into there, and then you'll have a hard time getting them out. If I was at home, I pretty much have an unlimited supply of shims, but I'm kind of limited to what I have on this job in my tool trailer over there. And right now we're actually just bending up a bunch of rebar ahead of time so that we don't have to do it as we're going along. So we're going to be ready to rock and roll, and we're going to be flying along here in a minute. But in the meantime, we're just getting things set up. That's the name of the game. Spent a lot of time doing prep work and then fly right along without even having to think about it. And at some point I got to make some sort of access here, because right here is going to be a doorway, but the doorway is not going to be until about this level right here. So I'm going to fill this all in with number 2 stone, but in the meantime I can't do that until the ICFs are poured. So at that level I'm going to have to build a platform to get over here through this door. So I wanted to try out this cheap rebar bender. This is like the smallest version, but it seems to be working pretty good. It's just not really a great way to tell when you're actually square, when you actually got a straight 90. We're getting it pretty close. We're getting it dialed in, making a mark on here, but it's better than bending by hand though. So right now, everything is secure to the footings with foam. So a few years ago I made these braces out of Unistrut, and I think I got a couple more at home, but maybe not quite enough to finish. But that's okay because they're only 10 foot and I'm gonna need more like almost 11 foot for this section here because it's dropped down so much. So I think we're just gonna use some 2x4s. We'll just make up some braces. And the reason I made these braces the way they are is because they're adjustable to go up and down with the plank setting. But we'll just put a couple pieces in here that are not adjustable, just screw it together and then pull it apart, and we can use the 2x4s for the walls. But these walls are so short that there's only a few long walls. Like this wall is kind of long. I think it's only 18 feet. That wall, I don't know, it might be 18 feet as well. So it's really not that long of a wall. So what I'm thinking is, instead of putting braces going down like a diagonal like you normally would on a long wall, I'm just gonna run a brace from inside to inside, like that way, underneath the planks. And that'll keep this foundation square, and we'll set it exactly where we need before the truck gets here. That way we're not needing to adjust anything, because normally when you put the diagonals there, I have the diagonals for this and they have like a turnbuckle on them, so you can turn them and you can adjust the wall in or out, but we won't need to do that. These walls are so short, and walls like these, we don't even need to do anything with this because these walls are so short. This plank will hold that middle brace from going in or out. So very minimal work as far as bracing. If you had like a 30 or 40 foot wall, you definitely need to brace it a bunch of times with diagonals going down to the ground. But in this case, this is all bedrock underneath here, so you can drive a stake all you want in the ground, it's not gonna hold. And on the outside, the dirt is frozen, so trying to drive a stake in there, I don't really trust it. There's 2 inches of solid ice on the ground. Nothing you can do with that. I plowed this driveway, and then we had rain while it was freezing. You're actually better off walking in the places that's just snow. I should have almost not plowed the driveway. It would have been a lot better. So the manufacturer of these ICFs is Build Block, and they make what's called a build buck. And basically what this is for putting inside of the window and door opening, and these catch the concrete. These are pieces of polyethylene. They catch the concrete, and it allows you to have anchoring spots on these squares. So these squares on the edge, these rectangles in the middle, and they are, I think they're every 6 inches. Might be every 8 inches, I'm not sure. But if you want to attach windows from the inside, but they also give you these ribs on the outside, which are continuous the whole length of them. So for most windows, new construction windows have a nailing fin, so you would attach it to here. You would attach the nailing fin right into here with this rib that's inside of here. So instead of having wood that's touching concrete inside of there, which creates a thermal bridge, and then it will move the cold from the concrete into the wood buck if you're using wood, these create a thermal barrier between them. So now your concrete is nowhere near, it's at least 2 inches away from the window with 2 inches of EPS. So it's a really good packaged item to make this ICF system really energy efficient. No more thermal transfer from window bucks that are wood. And then I've seen some people that just take the wood away and then they have concrete going right up to the window. That's definitely no good. At least the wood gives it somewhat of an insulating value, but this gives it a whole lot more. This is a whole nother level. So they're exactly 2 inches thick, so all you need to do when you're figuring out your rough openings, take your rough opening and add 4 inches to the width, add 4 inches to the height, and then you know that you're right on the money. So it's also got these little like nubs sticking out, and they're like exactly the size of the inside here, so they snap into place and they're actually really secure just the way they are. It creates friction so it stays there until you put the wood in there. I'll show you that in a second. All right, so right now I'm gonna go ahead and put some foam on these joints. So I get a lot of questions when I do these ICF pours. Why do I need this joint right here? Well, the reason is because the measurements from corner to corner never line up with exactly full pieces. And even if they did, you'd still have a staggered piece because you're staggering the joints. Here's one here, here's one here. You can't just stack them up and have a seam going right down the middle. Well, I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be very strong. So there's never a time when you can have no joint. So basically what I like to do is leave between at least a half an inch and at the most an inch, and then just foam it in, and then you just cut it down with a multi-master or multi-tool, oscillating tool. And you need to put blocks going across here to tie it together. But what I'm going to try, I've seen this done a bunch of times. I've seen people use just a strip of plywood there. So I'm going to try that too. But what I'd like to do is fill this in with foam first, let it dry, cut it down so it's nice and flush, then put the plywood on there. If you put the plywood on here right now without the foam in there, then concrete comes all the way out to the edge, and now you have like a spot where condensation forms because the cold from the concrete comes out to the inside. So sometimes I put a short block in like this just because that's what I had left over, and it was pretty wasteful to cut a whole block down for this little bit. So we'll just foam that in. It's no big deal. You just kind of go from side to side like this. Fills it right in. I find that these spray foam guns work better for doing stuff like this. If you use the spray foam cans, just the can by itself, this stuff will sag right out. But it seems to hold pretty well with the spray foam gun. And I also like to keep them on a heater before I use them. Get them up to a good 70 to 80 degrees. You just get a lot more expansion out of it, which means you get a lot more foam out of it. We're also putting vertical pieces of rebar in right now. Every 24 inches on center is what the plans call for. So basically with these ICFs, these ribs are 6 inches apart. So you put a piece of rebar in here, you skip 2, and then you do this one. And that's 24 inches. Alright, so today is pour day. We got 2 concrete trucks and a pump truck coming in a little while. About an hour and a half from now. So I just got a couple little things I gotta do real quick and then we're good to go. Over top of these openings, that's gonna either be a French door or a sliding door, I'm not sure yet. And that's gonna be an egress window. Over top of them, we need to form a concrete beam, which is called a lintel. Basically that consists of a piece of rebar on the top and bottom of that opening, and they go to the left and to the right at least a foot. And then you connect them together with these called stirrups. This is 3/8 rebar. We've been using 1/2 inch for the rest of it. So number 3 and number 4. So there's only about 8 inches of space right here, which in my opinion is not really enough to be a beam, but with these stirrups, it will be a beam. Now this side of the house is gonna actually be a gable end, so there's not gonna be any weight from the roof, but the joists are gonna be going this way on both floors. So there will be some weight on it. So basically in this case, I'm just trying to build it strong enough to hold the weight of itself, which just having 2 pieces of rebar in there would be enough for that. But we'll just put the lintels in anyways. It doesn't call for them in my plans, but I've built plenty of things with concrete to know that this is something that needs some lintels in it. And what we'll do here is we'll double up on the rim joist. This is going to be built from 2x10s for the floors, so we'll just put 2 2x10s going across here for the rim joist, and then that will act as the beam. And then over here, this is such a small opening, I think it's 32 inches. That's not that big of a deal. That concrete will be able to be a beam for that short. So basically I'm just going to hook on the bottom one, bring it up to the top one, and that holds that bottom piece. And you want to do it about every foot. So every other one of these openings here. That's actually up to the bottom already. You want to pinch it now? It's already up from the bottom. Yeah. Yeah.
How the hell do you get up inside?
You can, yeah, you can walk in here. We got a little ramp over here.
That way I can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah. Blowout in the corner here. I don't know how that happened. The only thing I can think of is that's kind of where it stepped down, and the step makes it so the concrete definitely can't go that way. So I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Never had one of these blow out before. You can see it bent the teeth. So I suppose some extra bracing on the corner maybe is a good idea. No, it's kind of crazy. Probably lost a half a yard. I got a half a yard extra, so we should just be good, but I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly a half a yard. Everything all right?
Yeah, you're all the way around on the first lift right now.
Okay.
So I don't know, what do you want to put a little bit over where you just backfilled and then give it a couple minutes, or?
Is that first truck still got something?
Still got some in the first truck.
Huh. What?
For the most part, it looks like it's all about close to halfway.
Yeah.
Yeah, like right here, we're right there.
So it's flowing right now so much better than before. I don't know what happened. It's not like violent like it was before. So that pour did not go as planned. I've never had any of this happen before. A lot of these corners push up. I've never had to put strips going all the way down to keep that from floating up. And because it floated up, you got things like that and that. That's terrible. Look, it just bent the teeth. Broke the teeth up here. I just don't know what happened. And then of course this happened down here. That I didn't really get a close-up of that, but literally the ICF broke there. There was nothing I could have done. There was no bracing that would have helped with that. It broke on the corner. It busted that corner right out. One thing that I think may have contributed to that, the pump company I used, I've never used them before, but he said he was going as slow as he possibly could. He said his truck was at an idle and he couldn't go any lower. But I don't know. I think that's the only thing I can think of as to why that would happen. Like these corners just rose right up. Never seen that before. So we've had to use the laser level and float the level because some of these ICFs are high, so we have to actually go lower than that with the concrete. Look at this right here. Like we had to brace this up. You shouldn't have to do that. When they overlap each other, you shouldn't have to have any bracing. The only bracing is where the seam is, and you can see that's perfectly fine. No problems at all where the seam is. But look at that. I don't know how well you can see that, but that's an inch rose up. That top piece went like that. Well, I mean, what do you do about that? That should never happen. I've used these build block ICFs for a while, and I've never had that happen before. I don't know what would cause that, other than just too much velocity with the pump. And if he had it turned all the way down, then I can't even imagine if he had it turned all the way up. That'd be just insane. So we had to put a lot of extra bracing, like this corner. Look at that. This piece goes all the way to here, and then this piece overlaps it to here. It broke the teeth to push it out. I just don't know. I don't get it. And actually, it broke this ICF right in half. This ICF has a joint right here, but now it's broken with a 1/2 inch gap right there. This one, because that happened, this one stretched out the seam, and then we kind of went slower up there. But I always go 3 to 4 feet to start, and then you just do like an 18-inch lift and another 18-inch lift. But 3-4 feet was too much with this. I don't think that was the problem. I think it was really just the velocity. The stuff was just shooting down, and it was like pulsating. And look at that. That's absolutely terrible. That looks so horrible. There's an inch of space right there. That shouldn't happen. This piece below it should be holding that piece from spreading out with the teeth. But it just rose above the teeth and then just did whatever it wanted. It just kept floating. I mean, I guess it's possible that the slump might have been too high, but I'm pretty sure they said it would be a 6. A 6-inch slump shouldn't be a problem. You know, I have plasticizer in this so we can go that kind of slump, because with ICFs, you really don't want it to be too dry, because there's so many ribs all over the place that it really gets caught up if it's dry. So you go with a higher slump, you use some plasticizer, and then you also don't really have to vibrate too much. And every time we'd vibrate anything, it wouldn't do anything. It was already consolidated. So maybe they had the slump wrong. Maybe they had an 8 or 9 slump and I just didn't know it. It's hard to tell when you're pouring it in the wall, because you're looking down 8 feet, 7 feet, 6 feet. Either way, you can't see what it's doing. You can't see how well it's flowing. It's shooting out of the end of that concrete trunk, but you can't tell what kind of slump it is. What am I gonna do? Could have been worse. Could have been better, but could have been a lot worse too. Could have lost the whole wall. Almost was gonna lose a whole wall. This one, if we didn't brace that, probably would have lost it. And then that small corner, we just about lost that wall. And it's a pain to try to float this level with the laser level. But look at that. It's just crazy. That's 1.25 inches that it rose up on the inside. Broke the teeth some spots. Just rode up above the teeth in other spots. Eventually we had to put this here just to hold that, just because this wall wanted to come this way. I think in the future we're gonna do some more bracing on the corners. I think in the corners especially, if I just ran a 2x4 up like that, like a vertical one, or maybe 2 in each corner, that would have definitely helped. That would have made it so that the corners at least couldn't raise up. And that's really where it was raising up too. The flats weren't really raising up. It was really the corners. So if we could at least stop the corners from raising up. Also, just connecting them all together would make it so that they couldn't really blow out so easily. Because if this one wanted to blow out and you had a 2x4 connecting them, it would be a lot less likely to do that. So I think that's the trick I think there's like 12 corners on this, so 24 more 2x4s. That would have done the trick. You know, $100 worth of boards and screws. I guess it's worth doing that next time. Also, I think just not using a pump truck. I have the capabilities of using my excavator as a concrete bucket, and I could have easily done this, and none of this would have happened if I was doing that, because I would have poured it a lot more gently, a lot slower, and it would have been fine. So I have a new attachment for my excavator where I have a concrete bucket with a chute on it, and I can reach way up there, even 12, 13, 14 feet. I can reach with that excavator. So from now on, that's what I'm going to do. Because if we had done that, it would have been no problem, and it would have saved me $1,200 too. But anyways, I don't want to sound like I'm sitting here complaining all day. It is what it is. I'm happy to have it done. I'm happy to have enough concrete. I'm happy to not have a wall blowout. I'm thankful for all that. So I don't want to make it seem like I'm not. Kind of is what it is. I'll still sleep at night. Well, this will be backfilled for the most part. The rest of it that's exposed, I'll parge it, and nobody will ever know except for you guys. It's not going to affect the structural integrity of anything. It just doesn't look that great right now, that's all. So on the next video, we're going to go ahead and waterproof and backfill. I have one little tiny window, which is tomorrow, to get the back side of this waterproofed. Tomorrow's supposed to be above freezing. After that, there is no above freezing weather on the 10-day forecast. So if we can get this waterproofed on the back side and backfill that, then it'll make it so much easier to move forward and be able to start building, as well as we got to do the concrete floor in here. So it'll make it a lot easier. We don't need a backfill out here much, but on the back sides, it'd be nice to have that backfilled. That way we can just walk right over to it instead of having this massive cliff here. It'll give us more room in the driveway too. So we'll work on waterproofing it from about there all the way to about there. That way we can fill this all in. And like I said, I only have one day to do that, so we're gonna get right on that first thing tomorrow morning, and then we'll backfill. So I will see you guys on that video.